Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Donald Trump is on the war path. He has escalated his tariffs on India. He signed a new executive order saying India now faces 50% tariffs. It's the highest bracket of tariffs that Trump has imposed, and he blames it on India's Russian oil imports. We'll bring you the full statement, the breakup of tariffs and the implications. We'll also tell you how the world is reacting to this trade war, how different countries have adopted different strategies to deal with Trump. Also on the show, an exclusive interview with the President of the Philippines, who's currently on a state visit to India. He says he wants to buy more Brahmos missiles. Meanwhile, in the US, the President has a new target. It's American banks. We'll tell you why. Plus, an update on the Uttarakhand flash floods. Rescue teams are racing against time. In West Asia, Lebanon wants to disarm and defang the Hezbollah. The question is, can they? A new debate over AI. Can it be allowed to change the climax of a movie? Who owns creative freedom? Also, are your laptop and phone killing your fertility? A new study raises old concerns. And on the India story tonight, we focus on India's conservation journey and the many successes we've seen since independence. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit China at the end of this month. He will be there to attend the Shanghai Cooperation Organization or SCO summit. This is the latest step taken by both countries recently to normalize ties, which have been fraught since the Galwan standoff in 2020. Prime Minister Modi's last visit to China was in 2019. Sri Lanka's anti-corruption authorities arrest Shashindra Rajapaksa. He is a former minister and the nephew of two former presidents, Mahinda and Gotabaya Rajapaksa. He is the first Rajapaksa to be arrested since President Anurag Kumara Dissanayake came to power last September. Bosnian Serb President Milorad Dodik is formally ousted after a court upheld his one-year prison term and banned him from public office for 6 years. He was found guilty of obstructing the implementation of the 1995 peace deal. This could mean an early presidential election for Bosnia's autonomous Serb Republic. Rwanda will allow teenagers as young as 15 years old to access contraception. It's a bid to tackle teen pregnancy. The Central African nation has around 13 million people, 40% of whom are aged under 15. Abortion is illegal in Rwanda except in cases of rape, incest or forced marriage. And Italy approves plans to build the world's longest suspension bridge. It will connect the island of Sicily to the mainland and is expected to be completed by 2032. The proposed bridge has had several false starts. The first plans were drawn up more than 50 years ago. He's done it again. Donald Trump has targeted India yet again. Just 24 hours ago, he had threatened new tariffs on India, and now he's delivered. The 25% duty has been doubled, so tariffs on Indian goods will now stand at 50%. Trump has escalated his trade offensive, and this time India is squarely in his crosshairs. Earlier today, the US president signed an executive order. It says the same thing as the statements and social media posts, that India buys Russian oil, that is why it will face higher tariffs. That's essentially what Trump's executive order says. Now, these tariffs will take effect in September. And what happens to goods which are already in transit? They will be exempted, but only till the 17th of August. After that, after August 17, all exports to the United States from India will be subjected to the higher tax, 50%. Let me put this in context. Does this new tariff apply to all Indian exports? The answer is no. There are some exemptions, like goods required for US national security, semiconductors and related electronics. Exports like pharma, steel and aluminium, they've all been exempted from the higher tariff because the US needs them. But beyond these goods, most Indian exports will be impacted. And remember, the US is India's largest export market. Bilateral trade last year crossed $130 billion. So this 50% import tax is not just a tariff, it's a penalty. And it's driven by politics, not trade. In fact, the order goes further. It also targets indirect imports. So if goods are routed through a third country, they will still face tariffs. There is no workaround. Basically, Donald Trump is turning up the heat. He's punishing India for buying Russian oil. And so far, New Delhi has stood its ground. A short while back, India issued a statement. It came from the Ministry of External Affairs. I have a copy of the statement. This is what it says. The United States has in recent days targeted India's oil imports from Russia. We have already made clear our position on these issues, including the fact that our imports are based on market factors and done with the overall objective of ensuring the energy security of 1.4 billion people of India. It is therefore extremely unfortunate that the US should choose to impose additional tariffs on India for actions that several other countries are also taking in their own national interest. We reiterate that these actions are unfair, unjustified, and unreasonable. India will take all actions necessary to protect its national interests. This is what the Indian statement has said. In an earlier statement, India had accused the United States and European Union of double standards. Remember, the EU continues to import energy from Russia. And despite Donald Trump's tough talk, America still buys uranium and fertilizers from Russia. Yesterday, Trump was confronted with this fact. Listen to how he responded.
India says that the US imports Russian uranium, chemicals, fertilizers, while criticizing their energy imports. Your response to that, sir?
I don't know anything about it. I'd have to check, but we'll get back to you on that. Yeah, please.
Well, that's Trump being Trump, dodging the tough questions and peddling falsehoods. The question at this moment is, what does India do next? There are two options. Option one, India could negotiate with the White House, and we know how Trump operates. He could announce a deal today, tear it up tomorrow, then return with a new set of demands. Plus, India would not want a deal that hurts its interests. And those issues, those sticking points have not changed. The other option is strategic diversification. Leverage India's broad network of partnerships, build long-term alternatives, and reduce dependence on unreliable markets like the United States of America. It won't be easy, it won't be quick, but it would be in the interest of India. And this is the path New Delhi seems to be taking. Which brings me to Russia. Despite the tariffs and the threats, India is doubling down on its ties with Russia. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval landed in Moscow today. This visit was planned months ago, but now it assumes greater importance. Doval met with senior Russian officials. He discussed a wide range of agenda items, from Russian oil to Russian defense supplies. He also discussed the S-400 defense system, the one that India is buying from Russia. India signed a $5.4 billion contract for the S-400 in the year 2018. 5 squadrons were ordered. 3 have been delivered and deployed. 2 systems are yet to be delivered. They could be fast-tracked after today's engagements. Now, this system, the S-400, has already proven crucial to India's defenses. In May this year, during Operation Sindoor, the S-400 reinforced India's aerial defenses against Pakistani missiles and drones. Some reports suggest that India could seek more S-400 units from Russia. So clearly, Trump's tariffs have had no impact on this relationship. Later this month, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will travel to Russia. He will co-chair an important meeting. The conversation will likely address energy supplies, tech transfers, and strategic infrastructure. President Putin is expected to visit India as well. This could happen in the coming months. So Doval's visit, followed by Jaishankar's trip, could lay the groundwork for Putin's visit to India. And that's not all. India is opening a second front as well, with China.
And here
New Delhi made a major announcement today. Prime Minister Modi will travel to China later this month. He will attend the SCO summit. SCO stands for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It's a grouping of Eurasian countries. Prime Minister Modi could meet President Xi Jinping of China on the sidelines of this summit. He had met the Chinese leader last year as well in Russia. Now, if the leaders meet again, expect them to send some signals. They may not address Trump's trade war directly, but it will shape their conversations. So join the dots. Doval's visit to Russia, Jaishankar's upcoming engagements in Moscow, and then Prime Minister Modi's visit to China. The message is consistent. India is asserting its right to choose, despite American pressure and in defiance of Trump's demands.
Decision and vowed to take action.
The deadline is August 7th. That's when Donald Trump's new tariffs go into effect. The US says it is about unfair trade. Countries think that it is a global shakedown. Whatever you call it, the result is the same: chaos, recalibration, and a flurry of backdoor negotiations. Each country is reacting to this differently. Some are defiant, some are desperate, and some are just buying more time. Let's look at how various players are playing this tariff game. And we'll start with Brazil. It faces around 50% tariff, the highest in the list. And how is Brazil responding? Well, Brazil has two words for Donald Trump: no thanks. President Lula does not want to call Trump. He does not want to talk to him. Why? Because Lula says Trump is not interested in talking.
I'm not going to call Trump about trade because he doesn't want to talk. But you can be sure, I'm going to call Trump to invite him to come to the COP because I want to know what he thinks about the climate issue. I'll be kind enough to call.
That does not mean Brazil is folding. It is taking this fight to the WTO, the World Trade Organization. Now, whether the WTO can help is another story altogether. Over the years, it has been weakened and sidelined. But Lula is betting on it. He wants confrontation rather than compromise.
We will pursue all available measures, starting with the WTO, to defend our interests. In fact, the government had already been working to strengthen our foreign trade and create new opportunities for domestic companies since before the change in administration in the US.
But not every country is looking for a fight. Case in point, Cambodia. Initially, it faced 36% tariff, but soon Trump slashed them to 19%. How did that happen? Well, Cambodia bargained hard. The country agreed to zero out import tariffs on US goods. Then they signed a deal with the United States, a deal to buy 20 Boeing 737 MAX aircraft. It was a clever pivot. Cambodia's deputy prime minister called it a gesture of goodwill. But it is what it is. Cambodia blinked to weather the storm and handed Donald Trump a win.
This rate allows us to maintain the remaining factories in Cambodia, and we have the chance to expand more factories, attract more investors to come to invest here for the interest of our nation, that is, the creation of jobs for our people.
So some are defiant, others are switching up the charm, but one country is stuck in limbo, and that is Switzerland. It is swinging between panic and pragmatism. Switzerland is facing a 39% tariff. It is among the highest globally, 39%. And the worst part, Switzerland was caught completely unaware. But Trump says it is because of the high trade deficit.
Well, the problem with Switzerland, we have a $40 billion deficit with Switzerland. And I spoke yesterday to Switzerland, but we have a $40 billion deficit with Switzerland. That's a big deficit.
Of course, Swiss industries went into panic mode. So the president rushed to Washington. It was a last-minute bid to stop the tariffs, but she could not even get a meeting with Trump. So Switzerland is clearly scrambling. The delegation brought charm and concessions, but even that did not sell. The question is, how long can Switzerland afford to play nice?
Der Bundesrat ist einfach
So for him, you see, in his interpretation, the United States is losing $40 billion or almost $40 billion a year, which is caused by Switzerland. In my opinion, that's absurd because if you also look at trade with services, it's almost balanced.
haben auch diese Unterhändler nicht den Support des Präsidenten erhalten.
And then there's Canada. It is America's neighbor, arguably its closest ally, yet Canada has been hit by a 35% tariff. Trump justified it using his usual logic, fentanyl and border insecurity. Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada has called it, quote-unquote, disappointing. He says Canada will keep negotiating but remains focused on building Canada strong. Translation, we are not escalating, but we are not begging either.
Canada's strong. We can give ourselves far more than anyone can take away. We're building this great country. I just met with the Premier, building BC, building Canada, building in a Canadian way, building sustainably, building together, building positively, and that's what we're going to do. And yes, we'll come to something with the Americans, something constructive with the Americans.
So what does this tell you? Trump's strategy is less about economics and more about ego. He's unabashedly transactional. He likes deals that give him visibility. He likes headlines and he loves unpredictability. The formula is quite simple. Threaten steep tariffs, wait for the panic to set in, and then cut a deal that looks like a win for America. That's what he's doing. As for the rest of the world, countries are weighing their options, trying to figure out what to do. And what they're learning is this. In Trump's tariff world, there are no rules. Each player is on their own. Chances are the weeks ahead will bring more chaos. Trump is testing nerves, poking egos, and forcing the world to play a game they never signed up for. So as August 7th approaches, the question is not just who blinks first, the question is who understands the game best. Staring down China, betting on Brahmos and fighting US tariffs. I'm not talking about India, I'm talking about the leader that India is hosting. Ferdinand Marcos Jr., the president of the Philippines. He is in India for a 5-day state visit. It's the first trip by a Filipino leader since 2018. A lot has changed since then. India and China clashed in the Himalayas. China and the Philippines keep clashing in the South China Sea, and Manila is buying lethal Indian missiles. This is a relationship that is going into overdrive. We've always had cultural and economic ties, but now there is a security angle. Yesterday, President Marcos met Prime Minister Modi. They elevated this relationship to a strategic partnership. Today, he sat down with us for an exclusive interview. We spoke for close to 50 minutes, and we covered a lot of areas like the recent Operation Sindoor, his equation with Prime Minister Modi, his assessment of the China threat, and his vision for the India-Philippines relationship. Like I said, we have a lot in common. China is challenging Manila on the high seas. China is challenging New Delhi in the Himalayas. President Marcos is aware of these challenges. He repeatedly pitched for a coalition of like-minded countries to take on China. And his position is not unique. A lot of China's neighbors face this threat. They would like peace, but they're also bracing for the worst. President Marcos is betting on Indian help to deter China. His country has already bought the Brahmos missiles. He told us that he wants more. Apparently, the Filipino soldiers love it. And it's not just missiles. We asked him if he would like to purchase fighter jets or warships from India, and he said everything is on the table. On global conflicts, the president was surprisingly candid. His country is very close to Taiwan. If China invades, what will Manila do? President Marcos says he will have to be drawn in. But I'll tell you one thing that stood out. Unlike other US allies, the Philippines is not disillusioned by Trump. He feels the US president will defend his country if needed. Like I said, we covered a lot of things. Here's a look at some of the key moments. Tell us about your meeting with Prime Minister Modi.
He's a very impressive man.
India and the Philippines face different but connected challenges in China.
A rejection of any unilateral attempt to change boundaries.
First country that bought the Brahmos system from India.
Officers and men who operate the Brahmos system, they say we need more.
Mr. President, welcome to India and thank you for joining us here.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm very, very happy to be here and be with you in India.
Tell us about your meeting with Prime Minister Modi and the equation that you share with him.
He's a very impressive man. And I think we were able to cover so many subjects, we covered a great deal of ground, and not superficially either. We spoke in relatively much detail. Generally, at these very quick meetings, hour-long meetings, you don't get to talk about, you talk about a great many things, but you don't really get to the nitty-gritty of the problem and how it applies to your two countries. We managed to do that.
India and the Philippines face different but connected challenges in China. You in the high seas, India in the Himalayas. Do you think that's one factor that is bringing the two sides together?
Inevitably, it is, but we are forming here. That's one of the aspects of the new parts of the India-Philippines relationship, is this formation of a global coalition, really, of like-minded states. States that share our values, that share our adherence to international law. And in our cases, specifically, it's the UNCLOS, because it's the law of the sea, and that is where we are having problems. But essentially, the similarity between our situations is that it is a rejection of any unilateral attempt to change boundaries. It's really that simple.
Did the China challenge come up in your conversation with the Indian leadership this time?
Yes, but very tangentially. We are not here to bemoan whatever it is that China is doing, but really to, again, form that coalition. We are not against anyone.
For the moment, I want to talk about the Brahmos missiles. You were the first country that bought the Brahmos system from India. What's next? Is it fighter jets from India? Is it naval systems? Are more purchases on the cards?
Well, everything's on the table right now. As you may know, the Philippines is in the midst of a modernization of our military. So we are looking to see what's the most suitable for our defensive needs. Let me be clear, though. We are not girding up for war. We are simply reacting to the challenges that we are facing. I've spoken to the officers and men who operate the Brahmos system, and they say we need more. So their experience of it, thank God, it has never been used. But from the demonstrations that they've seen, from the training that they've received both in India and in the Philippines, the practice runs that they've done, they seem terribly confident in the equipment, and I think that we are in the process of actually procuring more.
Mr. President, India was involved in a military conflict with Pakistan for a few days earlier this summer, and the Brahmos missiles were used, and they evaded Chinese defense systems and struck Pakistani bases. Were you and your team impressed by their performance?
Oh yes, they immediately contacted their counterparts here in India and said what happened, and they're chatting and trying to really analyze how it went, what the changes in down to that level, what changes in procedure they think that they should initiate, all of this. But with the performance, there's no question that the system did very well.
So are you confident then that Indian systems and Indian weapons can not just stand up to but defeat Chinese weapons in an actual conflict?
We don't look at it that way. We look at it if they are able to defend the Philippines, and I think they will. I think they're very good pieces of equipment. We have learned we have trained to be able to use them for maximum effect. Should the time come, God forbid. But as a missile system, they fill the bill, as it were.
There have been multiple close shaves between Chinese and Filipino vessels in recent past, with the Chinese ships also firing water cannons at Filipino ships. Are you worried that this may escalate into a full-blown crisis, that a small misunderstanding may blow up into something much bigger?
That is precisely what we are worried about. The likelihood of a full blown out war of one side or the other saying, okay, I'm going to war tomorrow, is very, very small. No one, I don't think, no one involved, any of these parties that we just spoke about, no one wants to go to war. However, and this is again, that's what I said, that's why it's so important for us to be interoperable with our allies, is you can make a mistake. Some guy pushes the wrong button. You know, the navigation goes wrong, and a mistake, a misunderstanding and a mistake. And that could just blow out of proportion. People start to overreact, and before you know it, it's a shooting war, and that is what we want to avoid.
Your recent State of the Nation address is coming under a lot of scrutiny. In last year's speech, you promised to not yield even an inch of Philippine land in disputed areas. This year, your statement did not make an explicit mention of that, of the West Philippine Sea, but you focused more on non-alignment on Manila's part. Would you say you watered down your statement? Did you, and why?
No, I did not. You're the second person to ask me that. But the two things are not mutually exclusive. You can defend your sovereignty, you can defend your territory, you can do all of that, you can modernize your military, and at the same time, you can continue to be a friend to all and an enemy of none. We say it again, the Philippines will not cede 1 square inch of our territory. We will not give up the exercise of our sovereign rights, ever.
You're a treaty ally of the United States, and an important part of that treaty is mutual defense. You were also in Washington recently, and you had a conversation with the new president, Donald Trump. Are you convinced that if the Philippines faced a security challenge, the U.S. under Mr. Trump would come to your defense?
I am. Because the assurances that we have been receiving in those terms from the new administration before I went there, and when I went there, and since that visit, I've been very, very strong from the Secretary of State, from the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State Mark Rubio, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and all the other officials, that the policy on the Philippines does not change.
Another flashpoint in the neighborhood is Taiwan, and
Yes.
most experts fear that Beijing will invade Taiwan before the end of this decade. If that were to happen while you're still in power, would you be open to allowing the U.S. use resources and bases in the Philippines to defend Taiwan, or would you rather stay out of it?
To be very practical about it, if there is a confrontation over Taiwan between China and the United States, there is no way that the Philippines can stay out of it, simply because of our physical geographic location. To understand how close Taiwan is to the Philippines, the large city of Kaohsiung in Taiwan is a 40-minute flight away from the capital of my province in northern Philippines, in Lawag. That's how close it is. And so if you think about it, if there is an all-out war, then we will be drawn into it. And I assure you, with the greatest hesitation, but we will have to defend our territory and our sovereignty.
There's the BRICS group
Yes.
that the U.S. president is not a fan of, evidently, but it is expanding, and now it has 10 members. And earlier this year, a senator in the Philippines said that Manila should join the BRICS. Would you want to join the BRICS?
I think that way, I'd certainly be open to it. I haven't given it a lot of thought. We'd have to we'll look into it, but it provides us more options. It would help to provide more options. Maybe it's something that we don't necessarily are looking for right now, but I don't know. We've not really thought about it. We've been too concerned looking internally how to make the economy work, how to bring growth, how to create jobs and all that. So, well, it's a thought. Now that you mention it, we'll have a discussion about it.
I have to ask you about Gaza. You are an ally. Philippines is an ally of Israel, but you've also
Yes.
voted for a ceasefire at the United Nations.
Yes, of course.
The situation is deteriorating. There is talk of starvation in Gaza. Do you think the world is doing enough to stop Israel? Do you believe Israel is starving Gazans on purpose?
I think the world is doing what it can. At least certainly the European countries with the now the threat of first the UK and then some other EU countries to recognize a Palestinian state within the year. I believe during the General Assembly of the United Nations, I think is the intended schedule. So these are the forces that it can bring to bear on Israel, because I think I don't know what they say in Israel, but everywhere else, I think it is unanimous that the humanitarian cost of the continued attacks on Gaza is unacceptable. The death, the destruction, and now the starvation, they should not be happening in this day and age. We should not allow this. But what can one do? We look on in horror at the death, the destruction, the suffering. But what always brings tears to my eyes are the children. Why the children? You know, it's impossible. At least an adult, you can say we're at war, so we have to sacrifice. How do you explain that to a child? And that's not fair. That's not right.
Thank you very much.
I fully agree with you. Thank you very much.
Even as the trade battle continues, Donald Trump has found a new target. We're talking about American banks, specifically JP Morgan Chase and the Bank of America. Trump has an axe to grind with these banks. He says they turned away his business. Listen to this first.
I was loaded up with cash and they told me, "I'm sorry, sir, we can't have you. You have 20 days to get out." I said, "You've got to be kidding. I've been with you for 35, 40 years.
Trump was talking about JP Morgan. He claims the bank tried to cut him off and gave him 20 days to move his money. And when did this happen? Trump is likely referring to 2021, right after he left the White House. And the timing is worth noting here. Trump had just lost his re-election bid. He was not taking it well. He tried to stop the US Congress from certifying the election. The US Capitol was stormed by a mob of his supporters, and Trump was banned from almost all social media platforms. So he lost his online presence too. And now Trump says even the banks turned on him, that JP Morgan wanted him gone. And it wasn't just one bank. He approached Bank of America to open an account, but they refused.
Brian was kissing my when I was president. And he said, "We can't do it. No, we can't do it." So I went to another one. I ended up going to small banks all over the place.
This is the man Trump was referring to, Brian Moynihan. He is the CEO of Bank of America. Trump says that he tried to open an account there as well, but the bank said no. This is not the first time we've heard such claims. Conservatives in particular have been critical of the banking industry. They have accused US banks of discrimination. They say their political views make them targets. Executives from industries like cryptocurrency and oil have similar complaints. Even the First Lady of the US says she has faced a ban. Melania Trump wrote about this in her memoir. She said her bank account was closed and the bank refused to open an account for her son Barron. The banking industry denies these allegations. They say politics has nothing to do with their moves. They blame regulations instead. You see, the rules around politically exposed persons are strict. Same with people linked to cryptocurrency. So bankers say compliance costs are high and oversight is intense. That's also what JP Morgan and Bank of America have said. They were asked about Trump's statement, and while they did not address the ban directly, their executives called for changes in regulation. But Donald Trump says he's had enough. He's promising action. He wants to go after banks, and he's working on an executive order, one that could force banks to conduct sweeping reviews and change how they handle compliance. This would put America's biggest lenders under pressure. Trump is sending a clear message to them. His political war has a new front, and that is American banks. Needless to say, these banks are wary. In fact, they may have seen this coming. Big bankers started making moves in June itself. They began meeting Republican leaders in state after state. The bankers have been trying to defend themselves, trying to hold on to their businesses. In places like Texas and Oklahoma, top executives from 3 banks held quiet meetings: JP Morgan, Citi, and Wells Fargo. Their goal? To reassure Republicans, to tell them that banks do not discriminate against gun makers or blacklist fossil fuel companies. In the past, Republicans have accused them of pushing woke policies. So now they're trying to stay off the radar. Republican states are threatening to pull billions in contracts, and American banks know the stakes are high. So they're lobbying with the people who want to regulate them. And this story fits a pattern. President Trump is going after one group and then another. He started with universities, then targeted big law firms, then the media, and now it's the turn of America's banks. It all happened so fast. A surge of flood water came gushing down. It tore through a mountain valley. The buildings in its way crumpled. They fell flat like a deck of cards. They were swept away. People had no prior warning. As muddy waters coursed through, they shrieked, they cried for help, ran to save their lives, but they did not get very far. Within seconds, an entire village was swallowed by the deadly waters. This is Dharali village. It has borne the brunt of a terrifying calamity that has unfolded in Uttarakhand, the Indian Himalayan state. This is a popular tourist destination. It has been lashed by heavy rains over the past few weeks. Yesterday, there was a cloudburst, a sudden extreme downpour of rain. This swelled river Kheer Ganga. It triggered flash floods. Tons of muddy water came crashing down. This happened in the city of Uttarkashi. It wiped out the village of Dharali and killed at least 5 people. It did not end here. A few hours later, another cloudburst was reported, this time in the Sukhi village. It's been more than 24 hours since, and this is what the situation looks like on the ground. Raging waters have persisted. Most roads are submerged. Many of them sit fractured with craters or gaping cracks. Dozens of homes have been destroyed. When the floods came, they brought a large amount of sludge with them. Now debris covers large swathes of the region. More than 100 people are missing. Many of them are feared to be trapped. Large-scale rescue operations are underway. Army teams have been stationed in the area, so have border police and disaster response forces. They're working under challenging conditions, braving rushing waters, mud-engulfed landscape, and combing Uttarkashi, looking for survivors with tracker dogs, drones, and earth-moving equipment. Helipad operations have also been activated. This is to support aerial rescue. Emergency operations are on, and so far about 200 people have been rescued, but officials say the worst may not be over yet. Heavy rains continued today. There are prolonged power outages, network connectivity is poor, many roads are closed, and response forces are unable to reach critical areas. This has hampered rescue operations, making them slower.
लगातार खोजबीन जारी है। रास्तों में चूंकि काफ़ी ज़्यादा मौसम खराब होने के कारण से अनेक स्थानों पर मार्गों का जो संपर्क है वो कट गया है और कुछ पुल भी जो है क्षतिग्रस्त हो गए हैं। उसके कारण से वहाँ पर पहुँचना भी मुश्किल हो रहा है, लेकिन उसके बावजूद भी सभी एजेंसियाँ, सभी लोग जो वहाँ पर पहुँच गए हैं, रेस्क्यू के काम में लगे हैं।
So what next? Rescue forces remain undeterred and Uttarakhand remains on guard. India's weather department has issued a warning. It says there could be more heavy rainfall in the coming days. In fact, neighboring areas have also been hit by heavy rain. Himachal Pradesh saw a cloudburst today. Given the situation, Uttarakhand has a two-pronged action plan. First is to prepare for the worst. More doctors have been deployed. Schools and colleges remain shut in some parts. Many have been turned into shelters. Provisions for food and aid are being made. Secondly, the focus is on damage control, while forces prioritize finding the missing persons. And there is perseverance. There's also fear. Officials worry that if water is not drained quickly, it can become a big risk factor. It can threaten towns downstream. So despite challenges, rescue efforts continue. We will keep tracking the situation. Let's turn to West Asia now. A big change is on the cards in Lebanon, one that could reshape the country and the region. And when I say Lebanon, which group comes to mind? Most likely it's the Hezbollah. That's how powerful this group is in the country. But maybe not for long, because Lebanon's government has announced a major move. They've asked the national army to disarm Hezbollah, basically to take away their weapons.
Authorizing the Lebanese army with setting an executive plan to confine arms before the end of this current year, in the hands of the forces outlined in the announcement special arrangements of the cessation of hostilities, and submitting it to the Cabinet of Ministers before the 31st of this month, for it to be discussed and decided.
Some background here. Hezbollah is a Shia militant group. It is armed and funded by the regime in Iran. Inside Lebanon, they have a unique role, sort of like an alternate power center. This power comes from two sources. First is the local support. Around 32% of Lebanon's population are Shia Muslims. A lot of them back the Hezbollah. The second is their firepower. Just look at Hezbollah's flag. It shows a hand holding a Kalashnikov gun. It tells you how crucial firepower is. In 2021, they claimed to have 100,000 fighters, plus around 150,000 rockets. So the Hezbollah was stronger than Lebanon's army. Today, that firepower stands diminished. After the Hamas attack of October 2023, the Hezbollah started firing rockets at Israel. By last year, it escalated into a full-scale war. Israel versus Hezbollah. Israel took out dozens of senior Hezbollah leaders, including their chief, Hassan Nasrallah. They also destroyed a lot of their arsenal. Despite that, Hezbollah remains defiant. They have refused to give up their arms.
It is in Israel's interest not to resort to a broad aggression, because if they resort to a broad aggression, the resistance will defend and the army will defend and the people will defend. This defense will lead to rockets falling inside the Israeli entity. Come, let us discuss a national security strategy and a defense strategy. The strategy is not a timeline to disarm.
This is a risky move by Lebanon's government because it puts them on the war path with the Hezbollah. There could be clashes, there could be casualties. So why is Beirut taking this risk? And will it pay off? Let's look at the timing first. This push is being led by the United States. They brokered a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah last year. One condition of that deal was disarmament. The US is pressuring Lebanon to disarm Hezbollah. Only then will they release financial aid. And Lebanon needs that aid. Their economy is struggling. In fact, it was struggling even before the war. The fighting added to their worries. Rebuilding will cost a lot of money. The World Bank says around $11 billion. That's what they need to rebuild. So the civilian government is very clear. They need Western money. That's why they're asking Hezbollah to disarm by the end of this year. Which brings us to the second question, will it work? Well, this is not the first call for disarmament. We saw the same in the 2000s. In 2006, Israel and Hezbollah fought a war. After 34 days of fighting, they agreed to a ceasefire. The UN Security Council also passed a resolution. That resolution asked Hezbollah to disarm. But in 2006, they resisted. Back then, Hezbollah was a lot more powerful. They had managed to fight Israel to a standstill, something no Arab army had ever done. So Hezbollah was riding high in the 2000s. They had the clout and the power to reject disarmament. But this time things are different. There are three key differences. Number one, Hezbollah has lost their long-time leader. I'm talking about Hassan Nasrallah. For most of the world, he was a terrorist, but in Lebanon, he was respected. Nasrallah was a very good orator. He'd been leading Hezbollah since 1992. With his death, the group has lost an experienced face, someone who could drum up public support. That's the first difference. Difference number two, Hezbollah's military power has weakened. 2006 may have been a stalemate, but 2024 was not. Israel inflicted heavy casualties on this group. Even now, they're striking Hezbollah ammo sites in southern Lebanon. And finally, difference number three. Their godfather Iran is weaker. Tehran is reeling from the combined US-Israel assault. Their focus is on the domestic front. Even if they wanted to help Hezbollah, it's hard. Earlier, they could smuggle weapons overland from Iran to Iraq, from Iraq to Syria, and from Syria to Lebanon. But that land route is now off limits. Syria's pro-Iran regime has been toppled. The new leaders are close to Western powers. They will not tolerate Iranian smuggling. So as things stand, this is a major threat to Hezbollah. Without weapons, their power could disappear. Having said that, it's still a risky move. Lebanon has a history of sectarian tensions. If Hezbollah reignites those tensions, things could spiral out of control. It promises to be a tense 4 months for Lebanon. Let's see how they navigate it. Back in 2013, a film called Ranjana hit theatres across India. It was a love story that struck a chord, a commercial hit and a critical success. 12 years later, it's back on the big screen. After all, nostalgia sells. Re-releases are the new gold mine. But this one's different. This one has everyone talking because the ending is not the same. Was the film reshot? No, it wasn't. The ending was altered by artificial intelligence, and now it is raising some serious questions. Questions like, who owns a story once it's told? The studio that paid for it? The director who shaped it? Or the audience who made it iconic? And this has made the film Ranjana the ground zero for a bigger war in the industry between creative freedom and artificial intelligence. And tonight we'll break down this debate for you. First, what is the new ending? In the original film, the protagonist dies. He sacrifices himself for love. It was meant to break hearts. In the AI-altered version, the protagonist lives. He wakes up in bed and life goes on. So the ending is now hopeful and synthetic. It is also deeply at odds with the filmmaker's vision. And that has made him furious. Director Anand L. Rai has called it a betrayal, almost like a reckless takeover. Actor Dhanush, who played the protagonist, is also enraged. He says, this strips the film of its soul. So they're now exploring legal action. Against whom? Eros International, the production house behind this. They hold the rights to the movie, and they're the ones who used AI to alter it before re-releasing the film. And while doing so, they did not consult the creators. Is this legally allowed? Can a production house do this? Well, that's where it gets murky. Copyright laws in India usually favor the producers. They finance the movie, so they own most of the rights. If Eros owns all the rights, including the final cut, this is fair game. Technically, they can modify and re-release the film, even with an AI-generated twist. But legal does not always mean ethical. And that's the tricky part. Imagine rewriting Schindler's List, so it ends with a dance number. Or turning Swades into a horror movie. Sure, you can do it, but should you? And this is not just about the ending. It's about who gets the final say in storytelling. Is it the director who wrote the final scene or the production house who paid for it? And we have to ask this question because here's the real structural flaw. Indian film contracts are outdated. They rarely include clauses about artificial intelligence or even digital reboots. Most writers and directors do not retain any rights after delivery. There are no clauses protecting artistic integrity. This is something Hollywood fought for in 2023. There were mass strikes that demanded protections from AI, and they did get some concessions. But Bollywood has none. There is a serious lack of protective frameworks, and in that vacuum, AI becomes a backdoor. Also, let's be clear here, the problem is not artificial intelligence per se. AI can restore footage, it can clean audio, it can even imagine alternate endings. In the right hands, it could be a great tool. The problem is how we are using it. When it's used to rewrite a film without consent, it becomes a threat. So what's the way out? Update contracts urgently. Every deal must include clauses about AI use, moral rights, and creator consent. And artists need more say. They should have a voice, maybe a platform to push their case. Because AI is not going away, the only way to stay ahead of it is to adapt with it. Not by rewriting movie endings in secret, but by rewriting the rules. Our mobile phones seem like an extension of our bodies. We take them everywhere. They're next to us when we sleep. They're almost always in our hands. And when not, they're safely nestled in our pockets. But if this applies to you, then a new study has bad news. It says that mobile phones may be causing a male infertility crisis. Not just phones, laptops could be part of the problem too. According to this study, keeping phones in pockets and laptops on laps can hurt sperm count. Here's a report.
Starting, speeding, slowing, stopping. Women rarely get the chance to forget about their biological clocks. It is ironic, then, that the world is witnessing what's been called a spermageddon. It is a crisis of global sperm count, which has declined by half over the past 50 years, and more steeply in the last 2 decades. This has worried scientists everywhere. They ask, could it be the pollution? Is inactive lifestyle to blame? Is it the toxins in our food and water? Well, a new study is out, and it says blame your trusted friend, the mobile phone, as well as your sidekick, the laptop, because they could be threatening manhood everywhere. This study has been conducted by Calcutta University and the Institute of Reproductive Medicine. It looks at samples collected from 1,200 men between the ages of 20 and 40. And it concludes that if men put mobile phones in their trouser pockets for over 5 hours or work for hours with laptops placed on their laps, then it could affect their sperm count. It says that the risk of infertility rises by 10 times. But this is not the first study that says so. Similar research before has said that mobile phones and other technological devices can increase the risk of infertility in men. Why is that? Now, this is where many studies differ. The devices emit radio-frequency electromagnetic fields. This is low-level radiation. Some studies say this disrupts the cycle of sperm production. Others say it damages the DNA. And while there is little agreement over this, it is important to take the research with a pinch of salt. Because for every study that says mobile phones harm sperms, there is another that disagrees. And in general, there has been only one conclusion. More research is required to understand the risks of mobile phones on sperm counts. Because even today, the evidence remains sketchy. Part of the reason why is because male infertility does not get enough focus. Research over its causes and treatments remains underfunded globally. The global fertility industry is booming. It is valued at more than $34 billion. but its focus remains women. So much so that in about 25% cases of couples having troubles conceiving, the man doesn't undergo any evaluation. So a shift in focus is necessary. This demands a societal shift, which is a monumental task, but it remains crucial. Without it, there is no way to understand what's causing this spermageddon. And until that happens, it is best not to be too afraid of being slowly exterminated by mobile phones.
India has always been a stunning cradle of biodiversity, but the British wreaked havoc on it. Under the colonial rule, animals were trophies and conservation was in turmoil. But when India became independent in 1947, a great challenge lay ahead. We had to reclaim our wild. It was a deep-rooted commitment, and it has made India a conservation champion today. That's the story we have for you tonight. As we inch closer to August 15th, we're taking you on a journey through the stories that define India at 78. This is the journey of India's wilderness, from being lost to being protected, one paw print at a time. This is the India story. Wise lions, foolish frogs, and talkative turtles. They are among the many stars of Panchatantra, the ancient Indian text. It was composed in Sanskrit around 200 BCE. Panchatantra is a vast collection of animal fables. It is India's cultural gift to the world, and it has shaped minds for generations. But it has also revealed something profound. Wildlife has always held a special place in the Indian society. India is nature's wonderland, a breathtaking cradle of biodiversity, home to about 8% of all known species, including 91,000 types of animals. And from sacred stories of the ancient past to the many hurdles of the colonial period to modern-day scientific conservation, complete with challenges and great strides, India's unwavering commitment to protect the wilderness runs deep. A society without rules often falls into chaos, and most of us live with this belief. But when it comes to conservation, we don't always follow it. Despite a dearth of policies or actionables, wildlife flourished in ancient India. We saw this during the Vedic period, when animals were not considered mere beings, they were revered as teachers and even as gods. Animals were protected because they were respected. As time passed, society became more structured, more laws came into place, and regulated conservation gained popularity. We see this in the Arthashastra. This text was written by Kautilya during the Mauryan period. Yes, hunting was a prominent feature of the time. It was a sport, a royal duty, and at times a ritualistic compulsion. But the Mauryas were also strict about wildlife protection. There were fines for harming animals within protected areas. King Ashok made noteworthy contributions as well. He issued several pillars establishing administrative policies. In the 3rd century BC, he introduced the 5th pillar. It focused on wildlife protection. This was the first documented conservation law in India. It prohibited the killing of certain animals. It spoke about animal rights and the protection of environment. After this, whether it was the Golden Period or the Mughal period, in many ways, pre-colonial India laid the foundation of modern wildlife initiatives. People understood and prioritized the preservation of wildlife. Fables, scriptures, religious norms, even children's games highlighted all of this. And India was teeming with birds and animals. But then came the invaders, the British colonizers. With their big guns, their hunger for more land and more trophies. And they took to hunting in a big way. When they weren't busy laying waste to India, officers took leave to hunt, and princely states obliged. By the 19th century, anger was bubbling. To combat this, the colonizers brought in new laws. They devised selective conservation. They protected the wildlife that was important to them, like elephants, because elephants helped with labor. They could be used on the battlefield. They created wealth for the British, so they were protected. But the British continued to relentlessly exterminate tigers, Take the Madras presidency, for example. In today's context, this included Tamil Nadu, parts of Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala and Odisha. Back in the day, Madras was also called Puliyar, meaning land of tigers. But during the colonial period, these tigers became trophies. And reports say Madras was divested of every single one of them. In fact, during the 50-year period between 1875 and 1925, more than 80,000 tigers were killed across India. That's not all. In the last 2 centuries, India lost about 90% of its leopard population. And in 1952, the Indian cheetah was officially declared extinct. So in the 20th century, backlash grew. Activists and journalists were on the front lines of this fight. The number of disillusioned British hunters also grew. Some of them became naturalists. This included the Anglo-Indian hunter Edward James Corbett, or Jim Corbett. He was born in Nainital. He hunted and explored jungles in childhood. But over time, he saw the environmental destruction the colonizers left in their wake. So he lobbied the British rulers, along with many Indians. And in 1935 came a major shift. Protected areas were created for the wildlife, like national parks and sanctuaries. India's first national park was established the following year in the Himalayan foothills of Uttarakhand. To focus on the conservation of tigers, it was called Haley National Park and was later renamed Jim Corbett National Park to honor the naturalist. This spurred a series of positive changes led by concerned citizens who rode this wave into the independence movement. Then came August 15, 1947. After centuries of colonial rule, Indians were ready to chart their own course. And despite the massive setbacks to its wildlife and economy, India showcased the phenomenal ability to bounce back. The post-colonial era witnessed big changes both in terms of conservation attitudes and policies. In the early days, there was no immediate policy framework. But the planning went on. The 3 organs of the government, the legislature, the executive and the judiciary, they all did their part. At the same time, a catastrophe was also brewing. Hunting, poaching and wildlife trade was still rampant. Tiger, leopard and snake skins were being sold for foreign currency. The advent of modern technology only hastened this process. So in the early 1950s, a series of acts were introduced, specifically to protect rhinos and elephants. In the late 60s came the golden era of India's wildlife conservation. New Delhi flagged the dire status of India's wildlife, and in the 1970s came the Wildlife Protection Act. This heralded a new dawn. It established protected areas and wildlife reserves, and to this day, this is the sole legislation protecting all wild animals and birds in India, enforced by the Constitution. Then in 1973, Project Tiger was launched. First, because tigers were in a dire state thanks to the British colonizers, and secondly, because of the broad philosophy. The idea was that if the tiger can be saved as the head of the ecosystem, then the hierarchy of the animal kingdom is maintained. If that happens, then there was hope for smaller creatures as well. This thought process was a major milestone in India's conservation efforts, and the policymakers walked the talk. It was the first director of Project Tiger who said, "The tiger cannot be preserved in isolation." His name was Kailash Sankla, and he did something radical. To keep the tigers safe, the project did not isolate them. Instead, the tigers remained in their natural habitat, and it was the habitat that was protected. These areas were made human-free. So the tigers were secure, and this turned the tide for tiger conservation. As for Kailash Sankla, he came to be known as the Tiger Man of India. Around the same time, several other wildlife heroes were also making moves, like Jamal Ara, often called India's first bird woman. She was a research pioneer. When she was not on the quest to find exotic birds, she could be found talking about them on the All India radio. Then we had S.P. Shahi, a legendary forest officer, one of the key architects of the wildlife resurrection of the 1970s, and perhaps the first Indian conservationist to raise an alarm about the dire state of wolves. This gave him the title of Wolfman. So in different parts of the country, hundreds of conservationists persisted, and thanks to their efforts, India covered a lot of ground. Eventually, the focus shifted towards research and the development of better, smarter techniques. About a decade later, in 1982, the Wildlife Institute of India was established. This was to boost research. The next year, India came up with an action plan, the National Wildlife Action Plan. It provided a roadmap for conservation. It boosted coordinated efforts at the central and state levels. It's been more than half a century since India adopted this action plan. The progress has been stupendous, but challenges persist. With mining, agricultural expansion, and urbanization, the human-animal conflict has intensified. Although poaching and illegal trade have reduced, they've not been eliminated. Sometimes the lack of funds also hampers efforts. But India has stayed the course when it comes to conservation, and in recent years, we've seen a renewed push. In 2017, India updated its action plan, building on previous experiences, making plans for the future until 2031. Now, the focus is not just on conservation, but also the involvement of the community. Plus, we are fighting climate change. It is hurting ecosystems and destroying natural habitats. India is allocating more funds to deal with this. This year, more than 3,400 crore rupees have been allocated for conservation. That's 9% more than last year. India has also launched a number of ambitious conservation projects, like Project Dolphin and Project Cheetah. Remember, we just said that cheetahs became extinct because of rampant hunting. Now there is a landmark effort to bring them back. In 2022, 8 cheetahs were brought from Namibia, and in 2023, 12 cheetahs came from South Africa. Official reports say most of them have adapted well. And in 2023, a female cheetah gave birth to cubs on Indian soil. This was a first in 75 years, and it was a major win for India's conservation push. Plus, Project Tiger has expanded. India now has 54 tiger reserves. It is home to more than 70% of the world's tiger population. Then we have Project Elephant. India has 33 elephant reserves and is home to over 60% of the global Asian elephant population. Or take the case of the Asiatic lion. This lion species lives only in the Indian state of Gujarat. It was once on the brink of extinction, but over the past few years, it has seen consistent population growth. So yes, like with any conservation effort in any country, there are challenges. But since independence, India has dramatically improved the wildlife landscape. Today, there are more than 1,000 protected areas in the country, with about 600 sanctuaries and more than 100 national parks. India is one of the most biodiverse countries in the world, and it continues to protect these ecosystems. India's wildlife story is one of resilience, a testament to how deeply nature is woven into the fabric of its identity. From ancient fables to modern-day science, from colonial challenges to post-independence revival, the journey has been long and complex, also inspiring. Conserving wildlife has not just been about saving animals, it's also about preserving heritage, sustaining livelihoods, and securing the future of the country. So as India steps into tomorrow, the wise lions, the foolish frogs, and the talkative turtles continue to inspire us. And the call to protect our wildlife has never been stronger. There's a lot going on in the world right now. 2 wars, multiple conflicts, global inflation, and now Trump's very personal trade war. So naturally, the US president did what any calm and collected leader would do. He climbed the roof of the White House, because when the world's on fire, you get to higher ground, literally. And then, just when you thought it couldn't get weirder, he danced. He broke out into an impromptu dance on the roof. Obviously, the internet had a field day. Take a look at this. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. The United States and South Korean Marine troops conduct joint drills. Firefighters battle the biggest wildfire of the year in southern France. And unhappy football fans throw suitcases to the field in protest. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1945, the United States dropped an atomic bomb on Japan's Hiroshima. The blast killed over 80,000 people. It destroyed most of the city. 3 days later, Washington dropped another bomb on Nagasaki. It led to Japan's unconditional surrender in the Second World War. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. He's done it again. Donald Trump has targeted India yet again. Just 24 hours ago, he had threatened new tariffs on India, and now he's delivered. The 25% duty has been doubled, so tariffs on Indian goods will now stand at 50%. Trump has